The moment that envelope crossed the threshold of Montecito, it wasn't just paper, it was a loaded weapon disguised as a father's final mercy. Because inside those 11 pages was a command so ruthless, so final, so emotionally brutal, it ripped through Prince Harry's carefully constructed new life like a blade, divorce Meghan Markle within 30 days, or lose everything. Not some things. Everything. His titles. His legacy, his place in history, his identity. His father didn't just threaten exile, he signed it into motion. And when Harry opened that letter, the air itself changed. January 9th, 2026, Montecito, California. The sun was still shining, the palm trees still swaying, the illusion of freedom still intact, but inside those gates, something ancient had arrived. Lord Alderton, the king's private secretary, didn't come with cameras or announcements. He came quietly. Precisely, with a kind of calm that only exists when devastation is inevitable. He handed Harry the envelope personally, then waited. Not outside the estate. Not in the driveway, inside, because even the crown understood this wasn't just protocol, this was execution. Harry reportedly sat alone, no Meghan, no advisors, no allies, just him and the truth he had spent years running from. And as his eyes scanned those words, something inside him cracked. Because this wasn't a warning. This was the end of negotiation. The ultimatum was simple, brutal, and impossible to misunderstand. Divorce Meghan Markle within 30 days, legally, completely permanently, or face irreversible exile from the royal family. No partial punishments, no symbolic consequences. Total erasure. The monarchy wasn't bluffing. It wasn't pleading, it was commanding. For years, Harry had lived in a self-created world where rebellion felt powerful, where walking away felt like freedom, where interviews, documentaries, and public accusations gave him control over his own narrative. But now, that illusion was collapsing, because the institution he thought he had escaped was reminding him of something he never wanted to face. You don't escape the crown. The crown escapes you. The letter outlined everything in terrifying detail. If Harry complied, if he divorced Meghan and returned to Britain, he would be allowed back into the family. Not fully, not as a working royal, but as something resembling redemption. He would still be Prince Harry, still the king's son, still part of the bloodline. But it wouldn't be a triumphant return. It would be a monitored reintegration. Princess Anne herself would oversee his behavior, every public statement, every private move, every decision. He wouldn't represent the monarchy, he wouldn't speak for it, he wouldn't benefit from it, he would exist within it, but under watch. It wasn't forgiveness, it was containment. And yet, even that fragile lifeline came with a horrifying truth: Meghan would be gone. Not symbolically, not temporarily, permanently. Because King Charles had made one thing clear. Meghan Markle would never again exist within the institutional framework of the crown. She wasn't part of the solution, she was the problem that had to be removed. And Harry knew exactly why. The letter didn't just issue commands, it listed violations. Years of them. Public interviews, commercial deals, Netflix, Spotify, memoirs. Accusations. Moments where Harry had transformed his royal identity into a commodity. Moments where he had used the crown's mystique while simultaneously attacking its foundation. To the world, it looked like rebellion. To the monarchy, it looked like betrayal. King Charles wrote with devastating precision. Not like a politician, not like a monarch, but like a father who had reached the end of patience. He acknowledged Harry's pain, acknowledged his childhood trauma, acknowledged Diana's death, but he also delivered a truth Harry had spent years avoiding. You chose her once, and I respected it, but you chose again and again and again at the expense of everything else. And those words hit harder than any legal threat ever could, because this wasn't just about Meghan, it was about loyalty. And Harry was losing. The consequences of refusal were almost too brutal to comprehend. Harry wouldn't just lose privileges, he would lose identity. His titles stripped, his succession rights erased, his symbolic place in royal history deleted. The Duke of Sussex wouldn't exist anymore. Prince Harry would become just Harry, a private citizen with no crown behind him, no protection, no legacy. Even his children, Archie and Lilibet, would lose their official royal recognition, their connection to Windsor heritage severed by a single decision made by their father. And that realization haunted him the most, because this wasn't just his life on the line, it was theirs. Inside Montecito, the atmosphere reportedly turned suffocating. The walls that once felt like freedom now felt like confinement. The mansion that once symbolized escape now symbolized isolation. Harry wasn't sleeping, he wasn't talking, he wasn't eating normally. He was walking alone at night, wandering through the gardens, staring into the darkness as if trying to find answers in the silence. Because for the first time since leaving Britain, Harry realized something terrifying. He had run out of options. Meghan, meanwhile, wasn't quiet. She was furious. Not sad, not broken, furious. Because she understood exactly what this was. This wasn't just an ultimatum to Harry, it was a calculated attempt to erase her, to remove her, to rewrite history without her in it. She reportedly told close contacts that this was an attempt to destroy her financially, emotionally, and publicly. And she wasn't entirely wrong, because hidden deep within the letter was a clause written directly for her. A silent offer. If Meghan agreed to a non-public divorce, agreed to never use royal titles again, agreed to never publish memoirs or documentaries about the monarchy again, she would receive financial compensation, enough to rebuild her life, enough to leave quietly, enough to disappear with dignity, but only if she remained silent. No lawsuits, no interviews, no retaliation. It was the Crown's final mercy, or its most strategic move. Because the monarchy understood something deeply uncomfortable. Meghan's greatest weapon wasn't power, it was narrative, and if she spoke, she could reshape public perception forever. So they offered her something in exchange for silence. Freedom at the cost of voice. Harry knew about that clause, and it shattered him, because suddenly this wasn't just about choosing between love and family. It was about choosing which version of himself would survive. The husband who fought for independence, or the son who returned to his bloodline. Both couldn't exist, one had to die. And as the clock ticked forward, Harry found himself trapped in a nightmare he never saw coming. The man who once believed he had escaped royal control was now being forced into the most personal decision of his life by the very institution he thought he had left behind. 30 days. 30 days to destroy his marriage, or destroy his legacy. There was no third option. By the time the deadline dropped below 14 days, Montecito no longer felt like a sanctuary, it felt like a pressure chamber slowly collapsing inward. Every second became louder. Every silence became heavier. And at the center of it all was Prince Harry, a man who had once defied the most powerful institution on Earth, now staring down the terrifying possibility that he had nowhere left to run. Because this wasn't just a royal ultimatum anymore, it was psychological warfare. Harry had spent years convincing himself that he had escaped control. He had spoken publicly about freedom, about healing, about choosing love over duty. He had reshaped his identity around independence, around rebellion, around breaking away from a system he claimed had suffocated him. But now the crown wasn't chasing him. It was waiting. Calm. Silent. uncertain, because it knew something Harry was only now beginning to understand. He was never truly free. The nights became unbearable. Sources close to the estate described him pacing endlessly, walking through the massive halls of his mansion like a ghost haunting his own life. The same house that once symbolized his victory over royal control now mocked him with its emptiness. The same freedom he had fought so hard for now felt like exile disguised as independence. And the worst part wasn't the letter. It was the truth behind it. Harry knew his father wasn't bluffing. King Charles had reached the point of no return. This wasn't emotional manipulation. This wasn't anger. This was institutional survival. The monarchy had endured abdications, scandals, betrayals, but what it could not tolerate was internal erosion. And in their eyes, Harry had become exactly that. A slow, painful erosion. Every interview, every documentary, every accusation, every moment where private family wounds became public spectacle had chipped away at something sacred. And now, the crown wasn't asking for peace. It was demanding closure. Inside the palace walls, preparations were already underway. Quietly, methodically, without emotion. Legal teams had begun drafting documents. Succession adjustments were being prepared. Titles were ready to be revoked with surgical precision. The monarchy wasn't waiting for Harry's answer, it was preparing for his refusal, because deep down, they believed they already knew his choice. But Harry himself didn't, because every direction led to loss. If he chose Meghan, he would lose his father forever. Not symbolically, not temporarily, permanently. No more invitations, no more reconciliation, no more quiet chances to return home. He would become a historical footnote, the prince who walked away and never came back. But if he chose the crown, he would lose the woman he had sworn to protect, the woman he had defended against the world, the woman he had sacrificed everything for. And that reality was destroying him. Meghan wasn't passive in this nightmare. She saw the shift in him. She saw the doubt creeping into his eyes. She saw the hesitation in his silence, and it terrified her, because for the first time since they had left Britain, Harry wasn't defiant. He was conflicted. She reportedly confronted him, demanded clarity, demanded loyalty, reminded him of everything they had endured together, the interviews, the public attacks, the humiliation, the sacrifices. She reminded him that they had built a new life together, a life free from control. But Harry couldn't ignore the truth anymore. That life was collapsing. The Spotify deal was gone. The Netflix future uncertain. Financial pressure tightening like a noose. The brand that once thrived on royal mystique now weakening as that mystique faded. Because without the crown, their power wasn't infinite. It was temporary, and King Charles knew it. That was the true brilliance of the ultimatum. It didn't just threaten Harry emotionally, it cornered him strategically, because it forced him to confront a reality he had avoided for years. His royal identity wasn't something he could abandon without consequence. It was the foundation beneath everything he had become. Without it, the world didn't see a prince anymore. It saw a man who walked away from his destiny. And destiny doesn't forgive abandonment. The children became the silent center of the crisis. Archie, Lilibet, too young to understand the storm forming around them, too innocent to realize their futures were being negotiated inside confidential letters and royal protocols. Their names, their heritage, their place in history, all suspended by their father's decision. King Charles had made that clear. If Harry returned, they would remain part of the royal bloodline. Protected, recognized, preserved. If he refused, they would become ordinary, not by accident, by decree. That truth haunted Harry more than anything else, because this wasn't just about his pain anymore. It was about their inheritance, their identity, their future. Meanwhile, inside Clarence House, King Charles waited, not with anger, not with desperation, but with the quiet certainty of a man who understood the weight of legacy. He had written the letter himself, every word deliberate, every sentence final. He had given his son one last chance, not to return as a royal, but to return as a son. Because beneath the power, beneath the authority, beneath the crown, there was still a father hoping his child would come home. But he wouldn't beg. He couldn't, because the moment a monarch begs, the monarchy breaks, and Charles would never allow that. The final handwritten line in the letter lingered in Harry's mind like a ghost. If you cannot return for yourself, return for them. Not for the crown, not for the institution, for his children. That line cut deeper than any threat, because it wasn't about punishment, it was about responsibility. The clock continued ticking. Every sunrise brought him closer to the moment where silence itself would become his answer. Because if he didn't respond, the crown would respond for him. Titles erased. History rewritten. Identities stripped away with cold, permanent precision. And Harry knew something terrifying. No matter what he chose, he would lose something he could never get back. His wife, his father, his legacy, his past, or his future. The prince who once believed he could rewrite his own destiny was now trapped between two worlds, one defined by love, the other by blood. One offering emotional truth, the other offering historical permanence. One built by choice, the other built by birth. And as February 8th approached, one truth became unavoidable. This wasn't just a royal ultimatum, it was a moment that would define Prince Harry forever. Because in the end, the crown doesn't chase you. It waits. And eventually, you either return or you disappear.